The man's face turned beet red as he strained to retrieve a capsule from inside his body. After wiping off the grime, he carefully opened it and pulled out $1,000. This trick could fool the guards, but it couldn't escape the notice of other inmates. John had witnessed it himself. A cellmate sleeping next to him had been gutted by a prison gang leader who stole his capsule.
I know you hide your money in your guts.
John had planned to bribe the guards for protection, but he quickly realized they couldn't be trusted. So he found Henri. Henri was nothing like John. From the moment he was sentenced, escape became his obsession. The two struck a deal. Henri would keep John safe, and John would bankroll Henri's escape. Sure enough, late one night while the other prisoners slept, the gang leader made his move. As he crept toward John, Henri was ready. He pounced from behind and beat the man senseless. Eventually, they made it onto the ship. As they prepared to dock, one prisoner leaped from a high point. He shattered his leg and lay screaming in agony on the ground. As he was carried away on a stretcher, he shot Henri a smug look, apparently preferring a broken leg to setting foot in this prison. Everyone knew that once you entered this place, you almost never got out. Historical records show that roughly 70,000 prisoners were exiled to French Guiana, but fewer than 1 in 10 ever made it back alive. The conditions were brutal. Sweltering heat, volatile inmates, and tight security. But the most terrifying thing of all was the warden, a devil of a man notorious for crushing prisoners' souls. Here, if a prisoner tried to escape and got caught, the punishment was 2 years in solitary confinement. A second attempt meant 5 years. A third meant transfer to Devil's Island. Clearly, breaking out of this place was far from simple. There were no private cells. Hundreds of men crammed onto the same platform, their feet shackled while they slept. Vampire bats hung from the rafters overhead. Even using the toilet was done in full view of everyone. During the day, prisoners worked the quarry, loading blasted rocks onto transport carts. One day, John told Henri that he'd accidentally dropped the capsule meant for their escape, the key to everything. They scrambled to find it, and thankfully Henri spotted it just before the guards arrived. The workload here was backbreaking, and many prisoners died from sheer exhaustion. Henri knew that staying meant waiting to die, but escaping meant walking into a trap. Still, he refused to let his life end like this. Finally, an opportunity came. Every month, a boatman delivered fresh vegetables to the prison. Henri approached him and asked how much it would cost to be taken to the coast. The boatman's price floored him. $5,000 per person, non-negotiable. With no other choice, Henri agreed. The next day, the prisoners were suddenly assembled in the yard. Someone had escaped the night before and killed a guard in the process. Henri looked up. Wasn't that the same man who'd broken his leg? The warden executed him on the spot. It crushed their confidence and shook Henri and John to the core. Afterward, the warden ordered Henri and John to carry the dead man's body. John, small and already shaken, collapsed from exhaustion. A guard walked over and began whipping them mercilessly. Seeing that John might die, Henri grabbed a rock in desperation and knocked the guard unconscious. Now he had no choice but to run. He sprinted and threw himself off a cliff, dodging gunfire before vanishing into the darkness. He stayed hidden until nightfall, then made his way to the river to find the boatman. The boatman demanded payment up front, but Henri insisted he'd pay in full once they reached land. The boatman sneered. Suddenly, his accomplices emerged from the shadows and surrounded Henri. The boatman had been bought off by the warden. Bringing Henri back meant double the reward. The next day, Henri was dragged back to the prison. The good news, the guard he'd knocked out wasn't dead. The bad news, he was being transferred to St. Joseph Island for 2 years of solitary confinement. His new cell was more like a dungeon. His every move was watched. Sound of any kind was forbidden. Even talking to yourself. Many men lost their minds in there and never recovered. Meals came once a day, just a bowl of watery vegetable soup. To survive, Henri drank every last drop, no matter how filthy. The guards made a sport of beating him, leaving him covered in wounds. To conserve energy, Henri spent most of his time lying down. Then one day, a guard brought a new bucket. Inside was half a coconut. Henri couldn't believe it until he found the note. John had bribed the guard to send it. Deeply moved, Henri devoured it. He stopped wallowing in despair. He started exercising, fighting to stay lucid. But a week later, the coconut deliveries were discovered. The guard was beaten to death on the spot. Word reached the warden, who came personally to interrogate Henri, demanding to know who sent the coconut. He threatened to cut Henri's rations in half if he didn't talk. Henri never gave up John. The days grew even harder. Henri wasted away until he was barely recognizable. The darkness, the stifling heat, the silence, it was suffocating. Most prisoners didn't last 2 years. They either died or went insane. Once a month, inmates had to stick their heads out like caged animals to have their hair shaved. Watching others get dragged out, Henri wondered how long he could hold on. Solitary confinement wasn't just physical torture. The psychological damage was the real killer. Its purpose was to completely destroy a person's will, to break them entirely. One day, the warden personally brought a bowl of meat broth. All Henri had to do was give up the name, and he'd get this treatment from now on. But Henri's eyes were hollow, his expression vacant. He lifted the spoon to the warden's lips as if to feed him. Convinced Henri had lost his mind, the warden ordered him thrown into the pitch-black hole for the rest of his sentence. Without light, Henri suffered through each day in darkness. He tried to end his life, but didn't even have the strength. Months passed. He could no longer tell dreams from reality. He was on the brink of total collapse, yet he still never uttered John's name. As time went on, Henri began hallucinating. He saw his beautiful wife. He saw John in clown makeup. He even mimed cracking a safe against the wall. They say dying men see their lives flash before them. and Henri seemed to be getting closer to that moment. A year later, when the guards finally opened the door, Henri was a skeleton of a man, too weak to stand. John, meanwhile, had used his banking background to cook the warden's books, earning himself privileges and more freedom than most inmates. When he heard Henri was back, he rushed to the infirmary. Seeing the emptiness in Henri's eyes, he was consumed with guilt, apologizing over and over, thanking him for never revealing the truth about the coconut. But moments later, Henri suddenly spoke. His madness had all been an act. He'd never lost his mind. He'd even been secretly stockpiling the sedatives the nurse gave him. Seeing the spark return to Henri's eyes, John knew he was still planning to escape. John shared a crucial piece of intelligence. This Sunday, the warden was hosting local elites and officials for an outdoor movie screening. Security would be lighter than usual, the perfect window, but they needed a boat and 2 reliable partners. The plan was set in motion. Henri kept up his crazy act while quietly hoarding pills. They recruited Paul, who had a boat, and brought in another inmate to distract the medical staff. Sunday arrived. John slipped the crushed pills into a guard's drink while their accomplice lured the nurses away. In the chaos, Henri and Paul grabbed their pre-packed bags, knocked out the medical staff, but the noise alerted a guard. Luckily, the drugs kicked in fast and the guard collapsed before he could act. The 3 crept downstairs and subdued the remaining guards waiting for John. But then the weather turned. A sudden downpour cut the movie short. Henri watched the crowd rushing back and knew they were in trouble. Just then, rainwater seeped into the electrical system and caused a blackout. The whole prison went dark. An accident, but it became their lifeline. Henri quickly swiped the keys, unlocking doors one by one. They crouched through the corridors in darkness. All they had to do was get over the wall. But when John jumped down, he twisted his ankle. At that moment, the power came back on. They had to move faster. Finally, they reached the river, paid their fee, and got the boat. They drifted downstream, but the boat was full of holes. Paul spoke up. The boat was overloaded. To lighten the load, he suggested they get rid of John. Henri refused outright. During the argument, Paul showed his true colors. He pulled a knife. Their companion was thrown overboard. Just as Paul was about to strangle Henri, John drove a knife into Paul's back. After dealing with Paul, they ran into a violent storm. When Henri came to, he found himself washed up on a small island, not far from the prison. Staying wasn't safe. He found John, whose leg was broken, and urged him to leave. But John was content. He didn't want to go through the chaos of escape again. In the end, he and their remaining companion chose to stay. Henri left alone. But before he could get off the island, he spotted a prison vehicle heading their way. Henri raced back and tried to pull John along, but it was too late. The guards had already killed their companion and captured them both. The nuns had turned them in.
He came back.
5 years later, Henri's hair had gone white. The warden looked at him with a mix of surprise and disbelief. Henri was the first man to survive 5 years in solitary and walk out alive.
What were you living for?
No one knew how he'd done it. Henri said nothing, quietly holding on to his dignity. Frustrated, the warden ordered Henri sent to a place from which escape was nearly impossible, Devil's Island. Surrounded by ocean, there were no walls, but the currents and sharks were deadly enough. Few prisoners lived there. Supplies came by boat. Many couldn't take it and chose suicide. Henri's hair was white now, but every day he stood on the cliffs staring out at the horizon. Then one day, Henri told John he'd noticed a pattern. The currents were deadly, but every 7th wave could carry him safely through. John warned him, "You might die." Henri replied calmly, "So what?" He built a crude raft from rags and coconut shells. The next evening, the two stood at the edge of the cliff. Henri checked the raft one last time. John looked at him and said, "I'm staying. Go on without me. Take my share of freedom with you." After all the escapes and brutal punishments, just being alive was a miracle. John had lost hope. His spirit had been broken. Henri pulled John into a tight embrace, silently said goodbye to his friend, and leapt into the abyss. This film is considered one of the greatest prison escape movies ever made. Not just because it came out 22 years before The Shawshank Redemption, but because it's based on a true story. There's a line in Shawshank, "Some birds aren't meant to be caged. Their feathers are just too bright." I think that line fits Henri even better. Compared to the carefully crafted Shawshank Redemption, this film is simpler, purer. Henri's relentless grip on life, his hunger for freedom, his defiance against oppression, it moves even those of us who live outside prison walls. After 36 grueling hours adrift, Henri finally touched land. A year in custody later, he was released and eventually became a legal citizen. This film reminds us that the meaning of life isn't just about enjoying it, it's about the pursuit of freedom.